All right. Well, so I thought the best thing to do would be to start with an area that is near and dear to your heart, since you just had the meeting this morning with the social media ladies. Okay. So the value of having a social media presence as a contractor, general contractor, trade contractor. And so I want us to talk a little bit about that, because chances are, whenever I meet anybody, it's the reluctance to get themselves out there, and you've gotten yourself out there quite a lot on social media. Yeah. So I'd start with, how many followers do we have at Liebo right now?
It moves, but like 10 to 11,000 right now. We're trying to cross that mark. It's been a little challenging to kind of jump over the 12,000 mark, but that's where we're at right now.
And when did, because I don't even know this either, when did you actually decide to jump and take the leap and start making social media content filming yourself and all that stuff?
Yeah, so it was an interesting journey. So yeah, it's very powerful. So I am a very private person. I actually had no social media besides like a Facebook that like had a picture from 10 years ago, and I would kept meeting with marketing companies, and they'd be like, oh, like you need a social media, and I was like, maybe it was like 5 years ago, and I was of the mindset that just buy a lead, buy the data, call that person up who's interested, whatever that lead came from, Home Advisor, Thumbtack, and I know what I'm buying. I'm buying a piece of data, I'm calling them, they're interested in doing a room addition, and I thought the value of like doing this long-term investment and putting myself on camera was just ludicrous. And then after just hearing it over and over, I started, I was awkward, and getting on camera, like I don't put my kids on social media. Like I'm like really just like a private guy, right? And I don't like boasting. So the whole concept of it was just very foreign to me, and it was really cringy in the beginning. I would like get up at job sites and like here, and you practice like anything else, and I started getting better. And really, where the defining moment for me was when I walked into a prospective client, and they were talking to me like they knew me. They were like, oh, right. And you do this and you do that. And I was like, damn. Like, so I came in, and there was just this like foundation of trust that they felt like they knew me through me making some posts and getting on stories. And that was just a major turning point.
But that was recent. I mean, that was like, so that gives people an idea to the time you began, putting yourself out there on social media to literally, that story, that happened when I was there a couple months ago. Like I remember.
Well, it was happening more. It was happening more. Like, I mean, from when I started it, when I started going all in, it probably took me like 6 months of just doing some scattered stuff. And then, when you came on board, it was already like, any house I walked into, even other construction companies, guys that see at the gym, they knew, they seen the content and like knew how many times a week I work out, and, and like they knew some of my habits. So that was just, it was a bit essentially getting a lot of the small talk out of the way. And they're like, all right, let's, we know what you stand for. We know who you are, what you do, right? How you run your company, and let's talk about XYZ, like our immediate need.
Yeah, because even 6 months, I mean, I'm trying to get a feel for somebody listening who's like, I'm thinking about getting myself on social media, because most people won't stick with it for 6 days, let alone 6 months. So giving them a clear picture of like, look, it's going to take you, because I know, like from my perspective, what social media does, and just in terms of, when I decided to join Liebo, right? It was like, I looked at it and said, there's huge value in here, because I could see right away on social media you weren't stopping, which from a marketing perspective, I look at and say, well, that's going to drive the cost of lead generation down through the floor. Because 100%. If you're paying for paid ads, now paid ads are, when I look at paid ads versus organic social, I look at it like this. Organic social media represents time. Paid ads represents money investment, right? Like but when you put the two of them together, it's literally it's the perfect storm.
That's what happened to us.
Exactly. Yeah. And so what I'm trying to give people an idea of is like our lead cost right now is maybe $30 for a good lead.
It's crazy.
It's crazy low. Yeah. And the reason it's crazy low is because we know how to do paid ads, right? We understand how to do that. We work on, we split test, and we put the time in. But then you put the time in, and our money's low as far as that goes. And then you put the time in on social media, which gives us an incredibly low lead cost. And I think that anyone trying to achieve that needs to understand that it's the combination of the two.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a major point because so to answer your question is like, it's basically a 3-year journey till now. I think I would actually want to check some posts, but it was about 2 to 3 years to get to where I am right now. And where I am right now is a very good place, and I've become a brand, right? And that's also another note to make is that I used to think that the company is the brand, right? And I was like, why do I need to put my face out there, right? And now I've understood, and like, look, we have a lot of jobs going, and we have director of construction operations and project managers and superintendents, and a lot of these clients I'm not really even communicating to, maybe once a month or, but I'm still the brand, right? People choose to go with me because they've seen me, they agree or connect with what we stand for. And essentially, like, I'm the spokesperson of our values and how we operate, right? So, but that's a big point because, I've spent ridiculous amounts of money on, as on marketing,
right.
and in the sums of actually over $1 million. I want to say even over $2 million because I used to have a sales team until the end of 2021. So that was like, $100,000 a month ad budget. So I've hired multiple social media ad, like, whether it was Facebook ads or whatever, companies that got me zero. That I didn't just spend like $500. I spent like 10 grand, 20 grand, right. 30 grand. And I was always flabbergasted how they got me like zero. Mm-hmm. Like I would spend like 5 or 10 grand a month for 3 months, and like maybe 4 leads would trickle in, but they weren't right. even like qualified leads, right? And that is the really good point. What you're saying is that once I had the foundation like of the funnel, essentially, right, of the social media presence. Now what you do and what Zach does, like, we have this $30 or $60 lead cost. It's crazy.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's important to drill down on too, is that the amount that a lot of people want to throw money behind the problem. Yeah. And so I did it. And like even that guy that you brought, that guy you brought to us at one point and said, oh, we might want to help him out with his social media, his meta ads. And I said, there's no social media, organic social. It's going to take forever. Yeah. It was like we wouldn't have been able to do anything cheap for him. He would have had to spend a ton of money. Yeah. But the tendency for these marketing agencies to come in, be like, it's going to cost you $8 grand. It's going to cost you $10,000 a month. They place a bunch of ads and they do no work. They write 1 or 2 or 3 creative.
And it's not their money, so they don't give a shit.
It's not their money, and they're making a portion of it. So they're incentivized to charge you more. It's like fraud. Yeah. But let me ask you a question, because this is going to resonate with people, I think. Who was the guru that you watched that convinced you to do social media? Because everybody's got one.
Yeah. There's some like kind of construction social media influencers, like Nick Schiffer of NS, I think it's NS Builders or NS Construction, in Massachusetts. There's Reisinger Builder. So there's like certain guys that they were really focused. Their audience was like trade contractors, right? And very technical content. But I'm looking at these guys and over 100,000 followers, and like I'm seeing, like, if I was a homeowner in Massachusetts, like even though this guy's content is geared towards builders, like I know everything about him. I know what he stands for just by looking at his page and following him. Like I would hire him in a second, right? Like the guy is a gem. So it's like following guys like that. And then I would go to like social, like, media companies. I'd be like, all right, this is the guy, like copy his, like, kind of what he's doing and take ideas from it and take ideas from his website. I ended up finding my own, brand voice. But yeah, I would say Nick Schiffer was one of the first ones from NS Builders or NS Construction. So I'm getting that wrong.
Yeah, and he has quite a lot of followers. So
yeah, like close to 200,000, or maybe it's more than that at this point.
So then that brings up a question. Then where were you in terms of number of followers when you started getting DMs from potential customers that resulted in business?
I mean, I would say under 1,000.
Yeah, see, that's important.
Yeah. It wasn't, It was, and it was a mixture of things. It was like kind of like, the tentacles of an octopus, right? It's like I was on social media, but it also required, at the time I don't do it anymore, but I was running Google ads. But like they would always end up coming to the Instagram page. And then from there, either calling into the office, DMing me. So it was interesting. Then we had to start like creating this tracking, to understand where our money was going and what was working. So that's a whole nother conversation, But so it was under 1,000. Now it's a lot more. Now we get messages of all vendors, trade contractors, potential clients.
So where do you see it going? Because we just to let everybody out there know, we just started doing conversing with a social media management firm in hopes to get even better at it. So we're doing a pretty good job now, and we know there's areas we can improve upon. So what are some of the things we're trying to now evolve to and accomplish with that company?
Yeah, so I've had different social media management companies over the years, and I've evolved as a company and as a person and learned something from every, individual or company that managed the page. So what I found was, what I thought, an old belief that I had was just put up nice shit and you're good, right? And a lot of these social media managers think the same thing.
Right.
Where's your content? Where's your content? Where's the pictures of the finished houses, right? And then I'm like, well, some dude or chick, can build $100 million house and their content's going to look much nicer than my $5 million house or $8 million house that I'm building, right? Which is still crazy, but there's always going to be someone bigger and better with nicer content. So I was like, that's not it, right? And also they weren't performing. So I was paying, a social media management company like $1,500 a month, and I would send them folders of finished projects, but they weren't performing. They were not. I would have like thousands of followers and get like 20 likes or just no engagement, and they wouldn't do anything, right? So then I realized that it's an authenticity thing, and people want to see the processes and behind the scenes and how we get from here to there and what do we do different and the quality. And so I was like, that brought me to, I was like, well, if I'm filming all this and spending all that time doing the content, I might as well just like hire an editor and just post it, which we did, right? And we're currently doing. It's just, thank God, we're very busy, and it's like, I don't want to be the director of that anymore because it's time consuming. It takes like an hour a day, and I don't want to, I can't be dealing with that. So we're interviewing right now management companies that we connect to their strategy, that are a higher level strategy of conversion and understand the authentic kind of brand voice. And so that's what we're looking at now. For somebody to take over I'll still need to film the content, right? I'll still need to get it over to the editor and take that time. Like that can't be, if I'm the brand, it can't be replaced. But having someone else just be like, hey, Joe, like this is what I need from you over the next 30 days, instead of me having to think about it and then post it and write it So
let's give people some tangible takeaways that they can apply right now to their construction business. So number one is, what are the bare minimum things you would say they need to start an organic social media campaign?
Well, considering that they already have a website, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm assuming that. And the website has a contact us, page that works, right? And so what people will need is, if they are not ready to hire social media managers, to kind of find what's working. I mean, Instagram has, all the ad tools. They have the analytic tools, of your posts that are not ads, just regular posts. to see what's working, what's engaging, and what's not. So to create, and these days you can do it on ChatGPT. Like, hey, make me a content strategy. This is who I am. I'm a residential luxury, builder in Idaho, and give me a content strategy based on, the best, marketing, ChatGPT commands can be a whole different conversation, but you can get just an overall content strategy, and start shooting it. Just get behind camera, start shooting it, posting it. There's the scheduled posting apps for like $30 a month or less, right? And just start showing people what makes you different. Your quality, your process, who you are as an individual, which obviously is who you are as a company, and just put that out there.
Yeah. I would say the biggest, easiest way to save yourself a ton of money and actually stick with it is find that video editor. First thing is find a video editor, because you'll do only so much, and then you'll try to learn CapCut or you'll try to learn, God forbid, Final Cut Pro or right. Adobe, and you'll fall right on your face, and then you'll stop. So there's only so much you can do in the app and Instagram or something like that. So I'd say you pick a platform, then shoot some stuff of you talking, hire a video editor so that he can get around, add some B-roll and stuff like that, and then you'll start to learn the process that way. If you just do those three things, you can actually start walking, baby steps. Yeah. But you'll get a lot further than somebody who's like, I'm going to take it all on myself. Next thing you know, you try to spend 2 hours a day editing and you give up because you don't have the time.
Right. You got to run your jobs or whatever. Everyone's different. Like, you're very tech savvy. I fucking hate, it just makes me anxious, So like, I go on CapCut and I'm just like, fuck, Mike goes on CapCut, and it looks like a professional edited video, but obviously your value is not editing videos, but it depends who you are. Some people will be able to, navigate CapCut and that will work for them. We pay for like 15 videos a month, like $500 or $600 a month. Yeah. So it just depends where you're at. There's so many resources out there, but you got to get out there. You got to just create, okay, I'm going to need, 3 educational videos a week, 1 carousel post, which will be like, you got to just create an overall strategy and just start getting the content. Don't overthink it. You just keep posting. You can always delete something a month later, a week later if you're not happy.
And you can reuse stuff. I mean, that's the other thing, is that you have to, understanding how the platforms work and the algorithm a little bit is key too. Just understanding that, just because your followers saw it on a Monday, or just because a few of your followers saw it on Monday, if you posted it theoretically 1 month later on Monday, those same people aren't going to see it. It's going to find itself to a whole new audience. I mean, you want to do some adjustments sometimes to some things, because sometimes there's some talk about they dethrottle things when it's just a repeat, but I don't even know that to be true. But anyway, we can kind of wrap up on that. I would say if anybody out there wants to know more about what we do with social media or anything like that, go to truebuilder.com, and we offer consulting for this type of thing. So that's that. We can move on to our next
let's talk
topic of discussion. So one of the other things that, so Joe and I do some consulting, aside from owning, we co-own a company called Liebo Builders, which does high-end luxury residential remodeling in the Los Angeles area. We also have a joint venture called TrueBuilder, truebuilder.com, which is a place where it's forming into a community, but it's a consulting service we offer to trade contractors, architects, pretty much any construction entrepreneur. We help you run the back end of your office while you worry about doing the front end stuff. So it's like the relationship Joe and I have. It's very similar. It's somebody to actually run the operations while the artisan or artist or trade contractor concentrates on what he does best or she does best. So one of the things we found,
just started consulting even for an architectural firm.
We do. We have potentially 3 architect firms now. So we found
it's interesting. It's interesting to find out that they have similar needs as building companies.
It's interesting to think that they take us serious, like
Right.
I mean, just like they're because as builders we're intimidated by architects, but then we realize like we've actually do know something about running a business, and sometimes they don't, and it's kind of like it was eye opening, but yeah, we can be really effective with that, especially small architecture firms who are artists who need back-end marketing operations, SOPs, software implementation, stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important for people to understand like also why we decided to do it, because I mean, you have had multiple exits, not only from the construction space, right? Your first exit, you're in your fucking 20s, right?
Well, first exit, technically, I was 19.
Right. What is it?
It was a bar. No, it was a bar. Yeah. I was at 20 when I exited the first bar. Yeah.
Right. Which people don't. Right. Usually, people that leave a bar, they leave in a fight, right, or something. Right. I mean, a bar business. Right.
It wasn't a fight at all.
Right.
Yeah.
You actually did a successful exit.
Successful exit. Yeah.
So that's
small, but but in that it was
what was the dollar amount?
Only like $75,000, but
I mean, fucking 19 years old,
Yeah.
That's and then you did the payroll company.
Yeah, payroll services company. Yeah.
Yeah, and you sold that.
Yeah.
How old were you?
That finally sold when I was like 25 years old.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah, and it came to Hollywood, wrote some successful shows and movies, and
well,
we can go on.
I wouldn't say they were successful, but they
you made money from it.
I made money from it. Correct.
Yeah.
I made money in a lot of different ventures for sure.
Right,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
No, you definitely.
Many careers.
Yeah. Yeah. Like a Da Vinci Renaissance man. That was the word I was looking for.
Yeah. Jack of all trades, master of none. It's
Yeah.
But which is a good segue to something that that people ask a lot, and that I found when we're doing our marketing testing and just in terms of just talking to people, a hot button with consulting clients, which is how to transform their company into a sellable asset.
Yeah, I love
right?
that.
Like how to exit their company.
Yeah.
And I do have a little experience in that, so I was able to. When I realized that no one has any idea how a company needs to look in order to get away, in order to sell it, in order to make it look attractive to private equity. So I wanted us to talk a little bit about that because it's
I was struggling with it till you came on board. I mean, like I knew like what needed to be done, but I was having a hard time executing it, and I kept kept running into this wall. I kept going after scale and systems. Right. And scale, end of 2021, when we were doing smaller jobs, I had 96 active job sites before I decided to let go of the sales team and then only do larger jobs. Now we only do, ground up or large scale remodels, but we still have a large amount of projects going on for a construction company. But it's a fascinating topic and a lot, we looked at companies to buy and they had a key man problem where they had a phenomenal business. As far as making money and the product, but you remove the owner, the business is dead.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
He has a heart attack. It's fucked.
And this is a timely topic for anybody who's out there, trying to purchase a trade company, just from the baby boomer generation that represents about 65% of the trade contractors. I believe that
it's a crazy
disproportionately high number of the companies that do general contracting and trade contracting. And they're all at the point where they're in their 60s now or late 50s, early 60s and trying to look at a succession plan. And most companies don't have one. And you hit on something you just said it a second ago. The main reason for that is the key man problem. And the key man problem means that essentially the owner of the business is the business. And if you can't separate the owner from the business, nobody's going to buy it. So one of the things when we were looking at companies too, we all the companies I intimately looked at about 12 companies in various construction trades to purchase, and I noticed that every single one of them was almost every single one of them had that issue, like a brand not even just a brand from a marketing perspective. A lot of them didn't even have marketing, but it was more or less from a delivery perspective that, if you take that plumber away from that plumbing business, it's gone. He's got no.
Yes. It's interesting, right? Because now we're looking, one of the businesses that we were going to buy right in Nashville, now they want to hire us as a consultant to figure this piece out, right?
Yeah.
So, I know, but I learned more from you, right? And you were like the finishing touches for, of really getting, so what are the the main things you're looking at, because right now we're potentially looking to do some roll-ups of things that we have a big management infrastructure. So, companies that we can kind of buy and fit within our management infrastructure, right? We have multiple PMs and superintendents and a lot of management staff. So, like, where can we grow? Different service, different state, right? So, I know you're usually the one that's the first eyes kind of on the business. So, like, what are the things that you're looking for? The main kind of like key points that you're looking for a viable business.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, first it has to have a product that's interesting. That's obvious. It has to have something we understand. So whenever I've looked at anything, it's been like, do I understand what they're selling and why, like intuitively, why somebody would want to buy it? It sounds stupid. It sounds like very basic, but it isn't. I mean, it's if we did look at one, I'm not going to give the specifics, but we did look at one that ultimately one of the reasons we didn't pursue it was because I didn't understand it. We would have had to become engineers, and it's like we're not engineers. So
they went there to train us for 2 years.
Right. Yeah, which would train 2 years of training to get to a point where then
beginner level. Yeah.
That wasn't going to work. So there is that intuitive part of it where it has to make sense. The second thing would be like once you look under the hood, it has to have cash flow. It has to have clean finances, like the financials. You have to be able to look at their books. You can't ask for a P&L and then the guy says, I'll get it to you next week or something. It's like
he's hiding something.
Yeah, you just run the P&L out of QuickBooks, and if it comes out of QuickBooks and you can read it immediately, their books are clean, they're not hiding anything, they've been organized, they've organized over time and they know what they're doing. And then they have to have a way of generating consistent business without the owner. And that's like, those are kind of the key things. If they, assets, all that stuff, you can get into that and that determines the valuation. But like, really, can you generate a consistent amount of business without, and then, because most of them, what they say is, all my business is referrals.
Right.
And it's like, and there's a statistic on that. And people have to understand, like, if you look at like actual M&A, mergers and acquisitions data, you see like that that most of those referral-only businesses lose 60% of the referrals after the second year. They're down to like 5% in 3 years in most cases. It's like, or many cases. Right. So again, you're buying something, and then by the time the guy walks away, everybody's rethinking their like. Imagine you're doing business with somebody for 40 years, and you find out he's retiring. That's the perfect excuse from the buyer's side to say, "Oh, I'm going to shop around now. I'm going to start looking at other products. Or are there other manufacturers or other service providers?" So it's like when we would do it. I mean, that's so they're going to do it too. So you have to think like, does it have a good lead generation source? And most of the time, when you look at these legacy baby boomer businesses, they check none of those boxes. I mean, almost all of them check none of those boxes, unless it's a franchise, in which case we're not really interested in buying franchises, so that doesn't really account. But like, so
creating franchises, that's another story.
Creating them is another story. But so for me, looking at that and having looked at many different, trade contractors, I didn't find very many that fit any of that stuff.
Right. So it has to feel right, like any other deal you do, whether it's real estate or whatever. It's the numbers got to make sense, and it's got to feel right. Their books got to be in order. They got to have cash flow, and they have to have a marketing plan of a lead gen where they can bring in consistent business without relying on handshakes from the owner.
Right. And we would, and like in some cases, if they have all of those things, or if they had an ability to hand off without the key man problem, we could forgive something like lead gen, because we could come in with our lead gen and be pretty effective. We could add organic social, just like we're doing in theory with Liebo, and then you could add a paid ads campaign, and within 6 months to a year, you could have something. So but that would just, and that might be the ideal job or ideal buy, because you would look at it and we would be able to lower the valuation based on the fact that they don't have that.
Right.
And get
as
it
well
at
with the books, like meaning if they had messy books, but we saw they were making money because we did our own forensics.
Yeah.
They're like, all right, well now they're worth less, even though they could be worth more if their books were clean.
Right.
We'll come in, clean up their books, give them a lowball offer,
right,
because we have to clean up their books and do, clean up a mess. So yeah, it's a very good point. If they have all these things, they just make themselves. Yeah. You make yourself worth more with everything buttoned up.
Yeah, and I think like the main thing with exiting any business is if you can check those items we just mentioned, and you can make sure that the package looks right. It's like anything else. It's like if you can wrap it up in something that's easily digestible, and then create a deck, that presents it well, you can sell a company. It's not like I'm living proof of it. You can sell a business.
I know, it's crazy. Exits from bars and, the other companies were more sophisticated, but I didn't even know the bar exit.
It was like he looked at the buyer looked at the property. This is a long time ago, but he essentially looked at the location of the property, which was in a district that had a lot of bars. So obviously it's going to have foot traffic. And then he looked at basic, just general. We didn't even keep books at that place. It was like there was
like an actual book.
I had the old clamshell at Mac, and I had QuickBooks on it, and I was still trying to learn the first version of like a Macintosh clam. Remember those clamshells with the colors?
Yes, I actually do. Yeah,
and then I was trying to like learn QuickBooks, but meanwhile keeping books on a ledger, and I didn't know anything about accounting at all. I was learning it as I went. I was talking to my old high school business teacher to try to learn basic accounting, and it was just a disaster. But he didn't look at that. He looked at the location. He looked at the amount of people that were coming in and what I was charging per drink and like the nightly cash that I had on hand at the.
You probably could have gotten more if your books were in order. I'm happy
I got
what
I got.
Meaning in hindsight, everything's always better in hindsight. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
But
so that's something we do also is succession planning, and both consulting on the buy side and the sell side for trade contractors. And you guys can reach us at truebuilder.com and set up a consultation, and we can walk you through what we think, look at your company and all that stuff. So on to the next topic here.
Let's fucking go.
So this is something that, I'm actually learning a lot from you on this, because you go about this different than I did. And I think that's an important kind of like umbrella theme too, is that there's one of the cool things about, working together is learning and seeing the way, for me, it was seeing the way you handle problems, because, a lesson I had to learn a long time ago was like, I have a way of handling, when you're an entrepreneur for a long, long time, you have a way of handling every single problem. So then as I got older, it's nice to be able to like let go of that my way and allow to watch somebody else handle it, and knowing that you'll get there too. It may not be the same exact way, but it's like, so and that's hiring and retaining top talent in the construction industry. So like just talking about how we go about
dealing with it right now in Liebo. We deal with it every day, as any big business would.
It's worth pointing out that we just hired someone who we absolutely love, and she's doing amazing. And
we just fired
you built
someone,
a great team.
What's today? Today's Wednesday. 2 days ago.
Who we just let somebody go who
we both like.
A lot, quite a lot. So talk about that. I mean, let's talk about hiring and how do we go about finding people and attracting people and
So it's been a journey. I mean, it's been a journey. So our structure is high-level management teams, and each team consists of a project manager who's located mostly in the office, and then a superintendent who's in the field, and they're partners essentially on the jobs that they're assigned to. And if they're larger jobs, like new construction jobs, they'll only get 1 or 2 jobs. And if they're smaller jobs like room additions or remodels, they can get 5 jobs per team. And so it's interesting. For some reason, by the way, it's always the hardest position. I'm going to say this as a side note. We actually joked about it, is the field management staff. I don't know why. It's this arrogance. It's it's either like, this ego of like, I could be a GC or there's also track builders like KB Homes and Toll Brothers that their solution to hiring is just pay a superintendent $140,000 a year, right? And they kind of kill the market, and these superintendents do nothing. I mean, I don't want to say do nothing. I'm sure they have great superintendents at KB Homes, but they generate this culture of people being able to get away with a lot because there's massive corporation. And I've hired some superintendents from both KB Homes and Toll Brothers. And if you don't know, these are companies that do 500,000 house communities, right, and a bunch of them at a time. So in one community, they'll have a couple superintendents. But it's like building a house off a McDonald's menu, right? It's a very, so they kind of get spoiled. They're getting paid top dollar. So that was just a side note. That's always a difficult position. But hiring and firing. So yeah, I've gone through a crazy journey with this. So I'll start with hiring first. So hiring, the way that I still part of my strategy is like Indeed, like platforms like that. But my old strategy was just Indeed, and kind of just responding to the immediate need, and that was always a problem because I'm always desperate to fill a position. Either I had to fire someone quit, whatever, or we got a bunch of new jobs, or whatever the reason is. I need to hire immediately, and you just start going through these interviews, and you're like you're not like super satisfied with anyone. You go through 20, 30 interviews, and you start lowering your standards, and you're like kind of hire someone, at least for me, this is my experience, and like ignore my gut, kind of about it, and just being like, well, I saw, 100 people, and only, 20 of them made it to first round interview, 5 of them made it to second round. I don't like any of them. And then but this one's the best out of that, and I'll hire them, right? So, I heard a great thing. I hired a construction consulting firm a while back, and when I was trying to figure out SOPs and different things, and one of the things I actually got from them, which was create a pipeline of hiring, right? Which was it was a game changer, right? Because it's like you always, every couple months, if you're a company you're not just a one-man show, and then you're trying to do big things, you're always hiring. That's the bottom line. You're always hiring. Whether it's once a month or once every 3 months, or you're always hiring. So it's having those conversations and creating the pipeline, whether you're poaching people from the top companies. I mean, the business is business, right? And going on LinkedIn and just having those conversations. So, because those are the best people, by the way, which is the people that are happy at their job, right? And they just want something more, right? Because when you're at these big corporations, there's a ceiling to your growth, and also growth happens very slow. Yeah. Right. The advantage, my kind of pitch to people coming from, let's just say, a multi-billion-dollar company, right, or whatever, or something along those lines, is look, we have exponential growth year after year. So there's tremendous opportunity for anyone that's a rock star here, right? We're filling up our C-suite, right? We need those rock stars. So people that are looking for that opportunity, they want those companies, right? So having those conversations, and even if that person is, needs 6 months to leave their job, or even 12 months, you have this pipeline of quality talent that you're talking to, and then creating a system for it where you have an HR department, or you can outsource an HR company, right? So if you can't afford to have a full-time HR person who's just consistently having these conversations, you train them on your system, of how to source these people. And some of it is Indeed, right? But it's still going through hundreds of resumes on Indeed, right? And not kind of responding to an immediate need, instead of always having that pipeline of quality talent. So that's something I still work on, and trying to improve, and making a careers page on the website, and talking about it on the socials. And so that's just a really good gem that I heard from this company.
I heard a couple things in there that resonate with me. One of the things is that longer term approach to hiring, where you're having conversations with somebody for a long time while they're still at another position somewhere else. I think the most successful hires I've ever made, and I've employed, it's over 1,000 people for sure. It might be more than that. It might be more like maybe in the 2,000 range.
Yeah, just in the solar company.
Yeah, that was hundreds for sure. Maybe 1,000 there alone. But you can kind of count. I can kind of count on two hands the people that I really, really remember that were exceptional. And one of the commonalities there would be it was somebody who we didn't get at first. In some cases, it was somebody we didn't get at first, but we kept talking to. Another thing was, and I kind of started looking for this later on, was, and Wendy fits this perfectly, because if look for someone who was that pillar, key person at the place they were before. The person no one could do without. If you can,
the A person,
however you want to call,
whatever
we want to use it.
But
I'd say a pillar of that company or something. Like, we all know those people in the companies that they're at. Like we all know about that. And it's always like it's that it's typically a woman. I don't give a shit. 100%.
90% of our management staff is female. It's our secret sauce, by the way.
Yeah. It's usually a woman who's in the office who literally takes care of everything, who that company really can't exist without. And the crazy thing is like, even when you grow to, I'd say when you grow to every 50 employees, you usually have one. Maybe it's less. It might be every 25 you typically have one. Yeah. But even at 200 employees, I could have pointed in each department up to that person who was like one of 25, and yeah.
Like when I called, and don't try to poach Wendy, I'll come after you.
Yeah, her name's not Wendy.
Her name's not Wendy, right?
Yeah, what are we talking about? Different lady,
I called her, Mike spoke to one reference, right, who she was working for the last 6 years, and I called the reference of the company she was at. She left 6-7 years ago, and she was at for 5 years. And the dude had a construction company for 20 years, and he said to me, he's like, look, man, he's like, I've been open for 21 years. I've had hundreds of employees. She is my top 5. Yeah. Exactly what you were saying.
And that's, I've given that same statement to people before, for a few people. Literally I've gotten a call and said, if you don't hire her, you're crazy. That was my response, just keeping it real. I didn't give a shit. And it was a corporate gig for the person. And I said, if you don't hire her, you're nuts.
Right.
You'll make the biggest mistake ever. So when I hear that resonates with me, because when somebody goes out on a limb like that for somebody, typically, well, they're telling the truth. Because
the dude was like, look, I'll get coffee with you, because he was a local builder. Yeah, he wasn't. And also the last company she was at, said similar, right? She solved every problem for them.
Every problem, yeah. I think he said that to me, you will not be sorry if you hire her. So it was 2 rave reviews from 2 separate employers, and I don't even think we needed that. I think we kind of got the sense of it immediately. We just confirmed it. They just confirmed what we already kind of felt, but that was it.
Speak to references. That's a good point, because Wendy was about to hire a superintendent, came off great. And look, people, they're marketing themselves.
But the reference gave them a bad review?
This is illegal, right? You can't do it in California.
Yeah, you can't do it in California.
But the guy was like, dude, we fired him because we found him asleep in a closet. we were about to hire the dude. And
wow. He would have fit in great. That would have been perfect.
I guess the guy was so upset, and it was a commercial construction company.
Yep.
The guy was so upset that he was like, fuck this guy. I'm going to tell, I'm going to save them, but thank you. But call references. So how do you attract, if we're talking about people like Wendy, director of construction operations or C-suite people or anyone, a turning point for me was paying more. That was a big turning point, right? Because my approach was try to save $20,000 a year and offer them bonuses and make them sweat it. And then if they're a top earner, if they're a top performer, they're going to hit the bonuses and they'll be attracted to bonuses that'll be a lot more than $20,000 a year. But what I ended up doing, and I did this, I went down this road and made these mistakes, and you've seen a lot of them, not a lot of them, you've seen some of them, is, this guy, he'll be able to manage his smaller jobs. So, we'll pay him, $80,000 instead of $110,000, right? Mm-hmm. As you know, the guy cost us more than $30,000 within a matter of 2 months in mistakes, right? And as the owner, always on the hook, right, for that mistake. So, meaning that's how I look at it. That person, the mistakes that, in the dollar amounts of jobs that we're working in, one mistake, $10,000, $20,000 mistake, it's what are we trying to do here, right? So be competitive with the pay. That's what I say. Be competitive.
Yeah.
We have made some recent hires that were scary.
Yeah,
scary dollar amount.
And $90K today is $50K 3 years ago. It's $90K is the new
in LA, right?
In LA,
granted, in other states it might be, right. $90K, we can't even really attract people anymore.
That's what I mean. It's like people are starting at $90,000 and, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for a job, hit us up.
That's right.
But so pipeline, you know, paying more for the right person, and having a system to always be building the pipeline, right? And then a big turning point was, you know, something we worked on the company, something you've implemented was a lot of the EOS kind of, we've added our own flavor to it, you know, but some of the EOS from the book Traction, which goes into like, you know, what our core values are, where our core focus is, and some of our non-negotiables. Like we wrote out essentially a Bible of like
values. Yeah.
Our values. Yeah. We had a whole philosophical debate on that. Yeah. Right. Like, do we hire and fire based on the values? And it was like, well, you can translate certain of these values and from different perspectives. So we made these like list of non-negotiables. Yeah. Right.
So there were rules or laws as opposed to values. Right.
Yeah. So we kind of made like bylaws.
We can go do a whole episode on that someday about the philosophical difference.
Bring it back. Was understanding who we are.
Yeah.
Because then when I'm hiring, now I'm not looking for someone that just has experience in bathroom remodeling or carpentry. I need you to have experience in ground up luxury residential construction, single family home. I don't need you to have experience in, you know, track homes that were $1 million a piece, because our client is much different than that. So, you know, having the core focus and hiring according to that, extremely important, right?
That's a good lesson for anybody, even just that runs a construction business in general, is just figure out what it is exactly that you do.
Yeah.
You know, then figure out what your values are. And then from there, you like you're saying now, find the people that fit that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so 2 quick questions that I looked up like basic data that people seem to care about this. So do you think it's, what's more important, hiring for skill or hiring for culture fit?
Skill or culture fit?
Yeah.
I'd say both. I mean, where we are, I used to, again, if you want to learn from all my mistakes, right, is I used to hire people that I would like, oh, this dude has potential or this woman has potential, right? And I like them and I see myself growing them because I was an underdog, right? I came from nothing and so I always kind of had this soft spot for like the potential.
Yeah.
Right. And it was it ended up being a weak spot for me because again, you might have a different structure inside of your company, but I don't got time to fucking train you.
Right.
Like I don't, right? And our director of construction operations doesn't either, right? We have a ton of jobs, a ton of revenue to manage, a ton of employees. I need you to come in with experience. We'll train you on our culture, our jobs, on our processes, but you got to bring skills to the table. Right. And if you're not a good culture fit, like you just kind of become this like dead stop in the whole system of team and everything is systems and teams when you're dealing with large, systems, right? So,
and you can be like culture's important. Culture fit's important. I mean, just look at like, I'll use a Buffalo Bills reference. The Buffalo Bills got rid of Diggs and now they look better than ever. And I think Diggs was a cancer on that team. I think he was a drain on Josh Allen and the rest of the team, and they get rid of him. And look, they seem like a lighter, I mean, they lost their first game the other day, but that aside, they seem like much lighter than they were. The vibe is good, right? So that can affect.
So then it's got to be both. I don't know if it was a trick question, but for me, it's. I mean, what do you think?
What do I think about
like the culture and the skill?
I honestly, when I found that question, is that a trick question? No, when I found that question, that's like the kind of stuff that people Google, and I don't know that people are necessarily Googling the right thing. To me, culture or skill, it's like I try not to assign too much significance to things like that, arbitraries. Like to me, they're arbitrary. Now, yes, they mean something tangible, but when it comes to looking at a person and evaluating whether or not they're going to do the job, the only thing I can say historically plays out, successfully is what I said earlier. Were they a pillar somewhere else? Because if they were a pillar somewhere else, they probably have, obviously, the skills. If we're hiring for a certain area, they're probably going to have those skills, or most of them. And then if they were that person that everybody relied on, they fit in with any culture,
Yeah.
I think the people who don't fit in with culture have something wrong with them, typically.
Yeah.
Or your culture. Your culture could be just, I mean, I've worked in some place, I say worked in, but I've owned some places that had pretty terrible cultures.
Right.
And like, it is what it is. It happens, and it happens as a result of shitty people being allowed to progress to places they shouldn't be or be in.
Bad hiring, just yes. My own mistakes. Yeah. Well, I mean, it starts from the top.
It does.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have limited control of it because you're in partnership situations, but like even then it's just, it can run away from you pretty quick, especially as you get into like larger groups.
And I mean, are we going to touch on firing? I mean, it's not. I don't think it's as long as hiring.
I think firing for me, firing is the moment you get that gut feeling. Like it. Well, here, look. There's two separate. Let's separate this into two different categories of company, right? At the stage we're at right now, where you're like the 10 employee range, you have to behave a certain way. When you get into like where where everyone's not really a direct report to the owner. So for now, it's like a gut feeling thing, and I hate to say that, but it really is. It's like the moment you get the gut feeling that they should be fired, you're 90% of the time you're right as an entrepreneur. Yeah. That's a 10.
The data usually follows pretty immediately.
Yeah, well, you should be basing it on some data.
Yeah.
That's a 10 employee or fewer company. When you get into where you have reports and then they have reports and no longer everyone's reporting to the owner or, you're starting to become like, there's a hierarchy and all that stuff. You can't, like, I almost never make that decision if they're not my direct report. So it has to be driven by data at that point. You have to have a clear, like, you have to have KPIs or some sort of benchmarks.
So important,
some kind of benchmark that you use to evaluate them because, when you're an entrepreneur, you can, as the owner, you can trust that your instincts align with the company's general direction. Mostly, sometimes some entrepreneurs are insane or idiots, and they're egomaniacs or something, and they would be, that's the exception. But the majority of entrepreneurs, they make a decision and their company's kind of lining up, the interests line up together. So they can kind of assume that if they're looking at somebody and saying, okay, this person needs to go, then probably they're right.
Yeah.
But yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'll finish it with this. I mean, because this is a whole nother topic, but I just want to, it's like, I think super valuable is, and again, it's just from trial and error, right? Every employee has to have an AOR, area of responsibility, right? Because they have an area of responsibility, then you can give them a KPI, key performance indicators, right, on what their performance is supposed to be. So if their area of responsibility as a project manager is timeline and budget and document management, whatever, right, you're able to make KPIs. Are you on time and are you on budget for your projects? And it's very simple, right? So feelings, like, I think we are both very good at our gut, right? And sometimes you might not be there, right? And sometimes things could be going on in life, but to be able to have that data to make those decisions. If someone's job is to run a timeline and budget, and they're not on time and not on budget, right, they're not doing their job.
Right. Yeah, you can, And I would say one more thing that I actually like the more, as I've been part of larger organizations too, that, when companies grow and you're now, you can see where personalities fit in. So if the cleaner your data is and your reporting and your visibility of that is, the more fair things are too. And I'm a big believer in, just not being, in treating people proper and not getting rid of the wrong person because of somebody's personality. So I think that that's kind of the final thing. So I have a cool idea now that I want to ask. What is the dumbest thing that you've ever encountered? Because construction is wild.
Oh, man.
So what is the dumbest shit you've ever encountered, like with regard to construction worker behavior? I can give you my story.
I think you have a crazier story knowing yours, but
I can give you a couple.
I mean,
because speaking of the guy who falling asleep, I mean, I think that's what made me think of it as homeboy falling asleep.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, man, it's like I become so jaded, right? Like as you go through hundreds of employees and you're like, I'm just thinking about it right now. Like it doesn't even seem crazy to me anymore, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, I've had guys doing drugs, it was when we had a lower level, we had a lot of jobs. So we had these, we call them runners, right? And they were essentially would like pick up materials from, suppliers, drop it off, go take pictures of jobs. They were kind of a very low level, lower level management employee. Man, those fucking runners, dude. Yeah, getting high, and I can pick up on that right away.
What do you mean runners? They were running what?
Well, their job was essentially to that's what we would call them.
Yeah.
Right? Would be pick up materials, drop off materials, take pictures of jobs, pick up checks.
Gotcha.
Just like the runner. Odds and ends when you're running 90 plus jobs.
Yeah.
So we have a bunch of those, right? And each one would be like a runner for like 10 jobs, right? And man, I mean, look, these guys were like, I had getting high, and then I had
like on what? I need
this is kind of scary because this doesn't happen anymore. We don't have this level of employees, but I had we were doing these unit turnovers in a building, and we had all the keys
of all
the apartments, and back then, this is like when I started out the business, I want to help people. And I hired guys that were like newly sober. The whole crew went and smoked meth and disappeared with like 50 fucking keys. Oh. And I'm like sitting there as a person, the buck stops here, right? And I'm like trying to figure, I fucking hunted these guys down. I went to basically drug infested area of LA, and I was just like, I'm getting the fucking keys. Like, I'm getting these keys. Like, you want your cash from working, like whatever, And,
did you recover the keys?
I recovered the keys. It took me like 3 days of fucking panicking.
So see, so we still have those principles. If for some odd reason employees run off with your keys, we will get them back. I mean, we can't control everything. Although background
I was exposed
checks.
to some dark things in my life. I know how to handle that, but I don't want to be dealing with it. But that was.
I had I have some crazy ones, but one was one time I got a phone call from a customer, and I didn't get very many phone calls from customers, so I don't know why this guy I probably knew him or something. So he calls and he says, your guys are over here drinking the beer out of my fridge. And in my younger years, I had a pretty good temper, so. I like to defend my guys because, they would never drink the beer out of your fridge.
Right.
And I know this guy also was notorious, this customer, for trying to get free shit. So immediately my mind goes to, he's trying to get something for free. Right. I've seen this hustle before. And I'm like, hey, man, there's no way my guys are stealing your beer out of your fridge. I was like, this would never happen. My guys would never do that. You know what I mean? And I was probably a little bit more vocal than that. And and then the guy goes, oh, yeah? He's like, okay, I'm going to send you the video. And so 2 minutes later, my phone dings, and I get this video of like two of my guys opening the fridge, in this backyard. They're digging a trench, and literally one of them tosses the shovel aside, walks over to the fridge, underneath the patio. He's got it on a ring cam, opens it up, grabs the entire 12-pack of Modelo out of the fridge, and they just start sitting in the trench and drinking it. So it's like, what do you do? You know what I mean?
Right.
And then I call the worker. I said, well, why were you drinking the guy's Modelo? And of course he says, no, we weren't. We weren't drinking the guy's Modelo. So I sent him the video, and I get back that, oh, hey, I'm sorry, man. We were going to replace it, but we forgot. It's like, so I had to apologize for that. Needless to say, no, I didn't fire them for that. That was a minor infraction compared to some of the other shit I dealt with. We'll have to save those stories for some other time.
Damn.
But that's construction's the Wild West. So I have so I think one of the things to talk about is contractors have a problem with cash flow, and it's I think the biggest problem in small construction companies is cash flow. So I think let's talk about that. Let's talk about how we manage cash flow, what we do to make sure that we that our cash flow is healthy. Some of the solutions we've put in place, even the variety of things, the timing. Well, let's talk about it. So what do you?
Cash flow is a tough one. So there's, obviously it depends what type of jobs you're doing, and there's factoring companies if you are, working in maybe the commercial space and you're net 90 or net 120, right? there's factoring companies that will loan you money against your invoices, right? Like I know someone that they do like gutter cleaning and vent and chute cleaning of buildings, of multi-unit buildings, right? So they're all like, some of these buildings are like net 6 months, you know, or net 3 months. So they use a factoring lender to, you know, because they got to send out, and they do it nationwide. So they got to, you know, the expenses of sending people out to a different state, putting them at hotels, and, you know, so they gotta come out of pocket. So they're using factoring. But so there's different, like, it depends what you're dealing with, you know, and you know a lot more about like that side of it, the financial side, the lending side of it. But as far as just nitty gritty, you know, making the cash flow work. So number one is payment schedules with clients. Considering they have a residential company, there's no, you know, you're getting milestone payments. You know, so net 7 days, net 14 days. And milestone payments are crucial. So setting up the milestone payments with the client where you're this is a big mistake. Construction companies, we're not in the business to finance jobs. That's not supposed to be, right? If we're making a 10, 20, 25% net, there's no margin in there to finance the job.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to be. We're not a finance company. Yeah. We're not, right? We're not banks. Yeah.
Well, it's important to say one thing too about the distinction between California law, contractor law, and the rest of the country, pretty much the rest of the country. And so we work in California, so we're confined by a rule that the contractor state license board, our licensing agency, requires all contractors to deliver work before we invoice. So we can't take payment in advance of services.
Correct.
Every other state, to my knowledge, most other states
like 50% up front,
you can get 50% up front. You can be working off the cash. You know, where we're concerned, we have to give a detailed payment, a milestone payment schedule. We're allowed to take a little bit for materials.
Yeah.
But our deposit, our initial deposit on any job, it can't be more than $1,000, even if the job is a skyscraper. It doesn't matter.
$1,000.
$1,000.
We have $4 million jobs. Our deposit $1,000.
Yeah, it's ludicrous. It's insane. But it's California, and they think they're protecting the consumer. What they do in actuality is they create a cash flow nightmare for the contractor.
Right.
So obviously now, given that world, and those are our constraints.
Yeah. If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere.
Exactly. On that,
But we get creative. That's the answer. So this is the biggest uphill battle. Like I said, if you could do it here, you can apply this anywhere. But we got to get creative. So, for example, $4 million project that we're actually starting in like a week. So $1,000 deposit, right? Obviously, I'm not going to go start a $4 million project without, so I get creative with the milestone payments and what they're called and what they reflect, right? Because
I would say we're specific, and not creative's the wrong word.
Not creative, meaning like at start of demo, right? I got to send dump trucks there. Right. I got to pay deposits to my
You're accounting
demo.
for all of the expenses in that progress payment and making sure we cover it.
Right. because I'm starting the job. No, what I mean by creative is I'll do at start of demo, because I have to pay deposits to my demo subcontractor. Some I have relationships with, and they'll bill me after. But for all intents and purposes, I have to pay a deposit or have some mobilization money that I need to pay.
Right.
And again, my intention whenever creating and training my teams on creating these milestone payments, and they directly connect to milestone payments of the subcontractors, which I'll get to, is that we're not a bank. Yeah. We're not in the business to fund this job, right? We're in the business to get paid and paid out. Right. I'm not here to float money. And then like clients sometimes are under this impression, like, what do you mean? You're supposed to float, right? Don't you float it for like 30 days? Like, and they take their time. Like, no, dude, like, I know. Like I get paid and I pay out, right? Well, as well, again, the buck always stops with us. If I don't get paid, I still need to pay out. Right. But the hopes are that I'm getting paid and I'm paying out, right? And sometimes there's the reality that you do need a float for a week or two, but so you got to have cash reserves for that, or sometimes even a month, or sometimes you can have problematic client that doesn't want to pay. Then you got to have those cash reserves. Yeah, you got to be able to cover it. Yeah, yeah. And in California, we can't stop the job unless there's like very, very big reasons for non-payment, and even the verbiage of that, like. It's a consumer protection state.
Yeah, very pro-consumer.
Right? Yeah. So for us, we always continue because we don't want to get like abandonment of contract, non-performance. So you always have to have cash reserves. Now, I didn't have cash reserves when I opened up the business, right? So it's being maybe creative is the wrong word, but being precise with the milestone payments.
Yeah, you have to know your expenses at each milestone so that you can account for them with the customer's invoice payment. Right.
Exactly.
And I think another thing too that we're getting better at is payables tempo, the tempo of your payables, because a lot of times our guys, our subcontractors, they're in such a they're so eager to be paid immediately upon completion of the job for the same reason we are. They're not in the business to finance anything, but the payables tempo, you want to ideally with any business collect more than you pay out, right? And that obviously, but then also collect faster than you pay out tempo wise. Right. The combination of the two of those improves cash flow. And it sounds intuitive or like a no-brainer or something like that, but it's not, because the demand that we spend, and I'll admit this because it's true, and I don't know that there's a way around it, but we spend way more time on our payables every single week, just in terms of man hours internal in our office, than we do on our collections, like 5 to 1 maybe. Right. And if you can, and what we're going to do over time.
We started changing it.
Yeah, we are. And I'm conscious of it. So it's like something that I'm believe me, I look at that every week, and it's, you get punched in the stomach by bad work on the job. Yeah. My punch to the stomach every week is knowing we're spending 5 times the man hours on payables as we are on receivables. And for me, it's like, I want to change that so that our focus is, so that payables is the lighter lift, and receivables is the thing that we're more focused on, concentrating on, all that stuff. So that just that quick reversal. And I've been in this solar company, we had a department we had more people in our billing department, billing meaning receivables, than we did in our payables department. Right. Like it was like 2 to 1, but it took a while to get there. It was always the opposite first. Then when we finally got there, it was like, okay, now that you immediately saw like an improvement in cash flow immediately. Yeah,
because I think the employee naturally they have a relationship with the vendor, the subcontractor. So there's this like everyone's pushing in the company for the subs and vendors to get paid, right? Because they're dealing with them on a daily basis, but they're not thinking about that like kind of about our money, right? Some of them, there's exceptions to the rule, but it doesn't make them bad. It's just like, again, they have relationships with these subs and vendors. They're dealing with them on a daily.
Right.
And they get, they want them to be paid. So you changed this tremendously for us. We were looking at the books and we were like, we're making money, but our cash flow sucks, right? Like we're like kind of, and you were like, we just got to slow down the tempo. This is a very good point. And I struggled with this. And Mike, when he came on board, fixed this was, dude, slow down the tempo of payment. I was like, what do you mean? These guys live hand to mouth. So it's nothing major. We did net 14, which might sound crazy to some of you that are paying maybe net 30, but for us, we pay you put in your invoice, Wednesday by 3 p.m. We'll pay you Friday, right? And what would end up happening is we would spend, some people in the company would spend essentially the whole Wednesday evening, the whole Thursday, and basically the whole Friday getting it, because then paying everyone out. So we're like, slow it down, net 14. We have those, that week and a half to review it and approve it not right. And it's not like everyone's spending 2 days just paying people out. So tempo is super important. But connecting, I'll just finish it with this, connecting the subcontractor payments, everything has to be aligned. So their milestone payments, if you have at start of demo 50,000, their start of demo, let's say it's a demo, you have to have your margins worked in. So it needs to be, let's just say 30,000, just throwing a number out there. But if your margins are 40%, because you have 20% for overhead and 20% for profit, then you need to be collecting that more, right, from your receivables than what's paid, because otherwise you're just collecting 10 and paying out 10, right?
Yeah.
So that's another important note on cash flow, which is you got to set up the payment schedules to reflect what your profits are of the project, right? And overhead, right? So again, if you got, whatever, just for easy numbers, if you got, 50% margins, so you're collecting 50,000, you're paying out 25,000, right? You got to make sure those payments make sense. Otherwise, you're not going to have money to take home, even if you're doing it correctly with the lining up the payments correctly. But if you're not making sure that you're collecting more dollar amount or more money than paying out, you're going to also have a kind of, because you got to be able to take money from every payment and move it towards your tax account, savings account, right? And you're not going to take it at the end of the job, right?
No, you still have operating overhead too. I mean, we have project managers, everybody's those are operating expenses, and so it's always, I think the key takeaway is it's always easier to pay out money than it is to ask for money, and you just have to get into it. And it's probably easier to solve in a larger company because you could just put more resources behind it. So if you have more people assigned to it, then theoretically you're going to be putting more energy behind it or whatever. But in a small business, it's the mentality of it. It's just making sure that an equal amount of time is spent on receivables. So yeah, and I think the other key takeaways those are the key takeaways with cash flow. I mean, that's, they're unfortunately, the other way to solve that, I think there's one other thing I would say is the other way to solve that would be understanding or leveraging debt. If you can leverage debt the proper way, then I've had a lot of success doing that in the past. We're doing it a little bit now with short-term friends and family loans that just give us a cash flow cushion. And I think that's really successful because that's like, it's if you can get the capital cheap, your friends and your family typically want to help you out. You're securing it with business assets, so it's not like you're not asking them for like an investment and then you're waiting 3 years to get their money back or something like that. And you can pay them a relatively decent interest payment every single month. And like I've had tremendous success with that. I think that's the one way, especially in California, you can account for, because I get the capital cheaper even than factoring. Yeah. And that's kind of the goal is to, and again, almost no one qualifies for factoring. If you don't know what factoring is they typically use it we call it factoring, but it's accounts receivable financing. Right. So you can look that up and get an idea of what we're talking about here. But
you need to have invoiced already.
And you
can't
have to
be like future business. You need to have invoiced for it and waiting for that payment.
Correct.
And then they'll fund you for it.
So you still have had to deliver exactly.
That's why I gave that example of that company, right? Like they'll invoice and they have to wait 6 months. Yeah.
And that's and also the banks that deal with those kind of, it's typically a bank or a financial institution that will give you that kind of capital, but they have to know the people who are paying you. So they have to know the companies you're being paid from, and they have to have like an A+ or AAA rather credit rating and all that stuff in order to do it, or at least a AA credit rating.
Yeah, underwriting is pretty intensive. Yeah. So, just want to add this in. We invest into companies. We look at companies that are healthy companies, might need capital for scaling, rolling up other companies, buying other companies. So if you're in the market and you feel like you're a healthy company, you just need some capital to grow, definitely hit us up and we can talk about that.
Yeah, and we can also help with capital structures like debt structures and stuff like that for anybody who wants to understand how to create a friends and family offering, because we've done it a lot. We're working on them right now, or in other words, we have friends and family involved right now that have lent to us, and so it's
we built out a fund. We built out a fund. Went first to friends and family, and we have capital that we look for interesting deals, right? So if again, I just put it out there, and if you feel like you have an interesting company and there's an opportunity there, we definitely want to talk to you.
So the other day I was talking to my friend, and he's a MBA
checking myself
from
over there.
from UCLA, and he mentioned that when he talks to the kids that are going for their MBA right now, that a lot of them are talking about they want to open a trade business. So I wanted to do this segment about geared toward either the tech entrepreneur who's exiting tech and now wants to acquire a trade business, or the kid coming out of his MBA program who wants to acquire a trade business. And again, the backdrop of this is, and I don't think they're wrong for this, because the 65% of trade businesses are owned by baby boomers, and they're all retiring. So there's going to be a big void, and these guys are rightfully and trying to fill that void, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But so what advice do we have for anybody trying to jump into this business who has no experience at all?
Yeah. Well, first of all, hit us up because we're looking for the same thing. Now, well, I'm not joking about that. If you are looking, anyways, we'd love to just chat and create that relationship. But yeah, trade businesses are very interesting. I would not buy a general construction business. We are one at Liebo, but there's a limit to the scale. And my hard-headedness used to think there was no limit, as I do think of everything in life, there's no limit. I ran into some brick walls at 1,000 miles per hour.
Let's explain that, because this segment, maybe somebody's watching who doesn't know anything about construction. Yeah. So what Joe is talking about is a general contractor is somebody who manages the entire project. It's a person who's defined as somebody who hires subcontractors or trade contractors to fulfill the individual details of the project. Like you would hire a drywall person to do drywall, an electrician to do electrical, plumber to do plumbing, but you're going to manage the whole project. The attractiveness of being a general contractor is all the money runs through you. I mean, you're responsible for the whole thing. You should make more money than everybody else on the project.
Yes.
But we know that's not true necessarily, because I can point to probably a lot of projects where pound for pound, my plumber and electrician made a heck of a lot more than I did, based on his time on an individual project. Yeah. So you're telling people—
the buck stops with the GC.
And you're telling people, and I agree with you, that if you're looking to acquire one of these companies, don't try to acquire a general contractor. They're few and far between, unless— I would say the only qualification is, which we'll get into, is unless they have a niche, which in our business is called a trade contractor, typically. So
right. I mean,
unless it's a GC niche, but we'll talk about that in a sec.
If we're talking about MBA grads or people who are exiting tech businesses, right, they're familiar with the concept of scale, right? So that's essentially what it comes down to, right? When you're dealing with a very complicated business with a lot of moving parts, it's harder to scale it, right? And we do it on a daily basis, right? And we are bespoke, boutique, luxury builder. And we're doing this at scale for the industry standards. Like we do large dollar amounts, large amount of projects. But where we're focusing our scale at, for example, is like construction management services, right? Because we have this big infrastructure and we realized that, I think Mike knew this before me, is that I can't continue scaling this thing. I thought I'd be able to just let me just go build 100 custom homes, right? And it's like, well, you can't really do that if you're a luxury custom home builder, right? No matter how good your systems are. So,
no, you optimize for something different. So with us, it's with a luxury custom home builder like we are. You optimize for making a lot of money.
Large amounts of money.
What you can do, you can make a great living doing this. There's no doubt about that. The differentiation is like if you're talking about taking something that has existed for 30 years and then franchising it or like you said, scaling it or offering it to new markets. You want something that I would start to qualify what type of service you want to deliver, and I would say you want to deliver something that can be done in as little time as possible, where you're delivering something like, general contracting. What we do what the contract we just signed is going to be a year, right? It's a 1 year.
12 to 14 months.
12 to 14 months. Okay, so that means we're tethered to this project for 12 to 14 months. And all of the subcontractors now, granted, it'll cash flow for 12 to 14 months.
And also your staff needs to be very high level. when you're dealing with
right.
that. And when you're dealing with what you're talking about with the trade stuff, your management staff doesn't. I mean, like, I don't need to say that, but like, you don't need $150,000 a year superintendent for, a plumbing service business, right?
Yeah, not if you're doing like emergency plumbing repairs or something like that. You also don't need the project management staff that we have, where they have to keep track of the payables, receivables, and then the entirety of the project schedule for 14 months.
Because you train each tradesman to be their own PM through software, right? And you're hopefully looking at companies that already have this in place, right?
Yeah, well, a lot of them won't. We'll take the template of the business we looked at in Nashville, right? It's like very little software in place, right? Yeah. A great niche product. Like, he is a GC, but he's got a great niche product, so that's a little different. He almost operates like a trade contractor. Shorter duration of projects than what we run by far. He's in and out in like a month, 30 days to 45 days at the most, which is still a little long. If I'm advising somebody on what to buy, I'm saying don't buy anything where you have a 30-day to 45-day. I would say buy a company that turns around a project in a week or less.
Right.
For example, and roofing companies. Installing, like a plumber who does tankless water heater replacements, or just replaces water heaters. He's in and out in a day. An electrician, or like solar was the perfect example of that. You could install solar in a day or two.
Yeah, but then you still have to wait for your PTI, right? PTO, permission to operate from the city, and connections. So you're dealing with customer service for months, but it's very scalable.
Yeah. Your interconnection. Yeah. So that's a unique. I don't know. They brought that time down, but there are obviously limitations to anything. But in theory, like a 3-day installation or a 1-day installation is ideal, because you're in and out of that project in a day.
I'm curious about this, because we're talking about this, and like I know intimately all the businesses you're talking about, right? Like, and just to clarify, like, you can have electrical trade contractor, right? But you can have electrical contractor that is focused on, new construction and multi-unit buildings. So he goes to one project and he's there for months, right? And you can have what, Mike was talking about, an electrical contractor who found like a niche or service business where he just does panel upgrades, or just, changes out all your lights to recessed lights or whatever, right?
Or,
a niched in and out thing, and it becomes less complicated.
EV chargers.
EV chargers, right? Less complicated, more scalable, right? So within each trade, there's different types of businesses and niches, right? And
totally.
You have plumbing service business. I know a guy does a couple $100 million a year. Monkey Wrench Plumbing.
You've mentioned him before.
Yeah. Just does service, and I've spoken to him, like, are you interested in jobs? He's like, no, I wouldn't even know how to execute it.
Yeah.
Like, the job's from me.
He's doing emergency services?
Yeah. Emergency services, and he's got, and he's got it down to a science, and everyone's on a software. Every truck produces X, and, and they've got all their KPIs, and, he's got literally doing over $250 million a year in business from service, right? I'm sure he'll probably sell one day. And so it's important if you're coming not from the construction space, we're talking about kind of like, industry lingo is like within each trade, there's going to be different focuses and different niches and different things, right? But,
I stick with that for a sec, because we're painting a picture of what you're going to, when you get into looking at these various trade companies, these are the variables you're going to see. So like, you're going to see somebody who is potentially, like a friend of mine looked at companies in Florida, and he ended up settling on, and he actually acquired and closed, and he's running it now. They do commercial kitchen equipment repairs. Yeah, emergency commercial equipment repairs. So in his case, now that's super niche, right? It's technically a trade, but it isn't. It's kind of a service business. You have to understand how he could easily go and start installing commercial hoods and all the different Ansel systems and stuff like that. He could also start to clean commercial hoods. That's what he was doing. He looked at it. He said, they're just doing the repairs now. I'm going to set up and his expansion plan was to add on these different modules that would allow him to do installations and also cleaning. And
Right.
so that's the natural progression to the next thing.
Damn. Yeah. No, okay.
So in the variety of companies I looked at custom closet installations, like installing custom closets, and they did garages, closets. So what was the other thing? Blinds. They did drapery, blinds. So, and I thought, okay, this is interesting, but what does it expand to? And
Right.
where do you expand?
Right.
So the type of product you're doing and what your people that you're going to be acquiring are skilled to do determines where you can go from there. Or it might just be a matter of you look at the company and you say, okay, they're confined to this geographic region right now. All I got to do is get another truck and expand out to these other regions. But to make a fine point on it, it's like what the key takeaway is. I mean, one thing I would say is a definite piece of advice for anybody looking to buy a trade company or a construction company of any type is, number one, stay away from general contracting if you don't know what you're doing, because
this is coming from a general contractor.
Yeah, because our projects last too long.
Yeah.
Number two, it's find something that is, like we're describing, interesting, that you can clearly see a path forward to expand, whether it be geographically, whether it be into different products, that are complementary to what you're already doing, and then and start with something like that.
Yeah.
And then,
I wonder if if the person just needs to be smart, perceptive, or they actually need to have some construction background to see the opportunity. I guess it would always be more valuable to actually know construction to see where, the things you're talking about, the verticals or just scaling up what you're doing, because if you can't recognize the opportunity, you won't see the opportunity, right? So it's very interesting what you're saying. For us, I was just saying in our GC business, we're luxury boutique, right? So we knew there's a limit to that scale, right? But we saw an opportunity in construction management services, right? Whether it's it could be a fund, a private fund doing a deal that they just need a CM to vet, the architects, engineers, civil engineers, the GCs, and kind of manage payments and approve payments to, an owner's rep who wants to build, $20-30 million house, in some other state, doesn't know anyone there. And wants a company that he trusts to, again, vet all these people and manage them and manage the payments. So we found a more scalable niche in that, right?
Yeah.
But
we're also doing something. So where we're looking around to expand is by leveraging the fact that what we do is really difficult. It's very difficult to do what we do and maintain the quality for somebody who wants to build custom. It's just, It's not like I wish to give a sense of it to somebody who doesn't know. It's you're talking about employing the absolute best artisan craftsman to do something, and do it the same way every single time. It's like complicated manufacturing. It might even be. In a way, it's more complicated, I would say, than aerospace manufacturing. I get this just from talking to my brother-in-law with SpaceX. It's like once they get it right one time, they have it on an assembly line. It's like then they look at tolerances and stuff like that, and the quality control at the end of the assembly line. And my dad was a automobile engineer, and so. Same thing. He explained quality control to me many, many times. I heard him talk his stories about quality control all the time when he's on an assembly line. But once you get those tolerances correct, you get it all the time with us, we're sending people out to these projects and then requiring them to do almost the same level of precision. I mean, obviously it's not metal work, but it's a similar level of precision in tile, in woodwork, in millwork. We
have metal work.
Yeah, we do have metal work.
Cold rolled steel,
details, and we have a much more picky client than the person who's getting a car and doesn't understand, doesn't see what's under the hood.
Scratch on it, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, that's an important thing, So it's understanding where the opportunity is. You know, that was my point before. It's like, you know, we are very ambitious, you know, both you and I, and we're shooting for the billions. I mean, I feel kind of weird saying that, but we are. Like and it's not about a money thing. It's just, for me, it's just internal. I just need to go big, and I just, you know, but I knew that the avenue wasn't going to be through X, right? And we had to look for something that was more scalable. So when you're looking, my point is, when you're looking at these companies, right, they might be doing something like you were saying, where they're doing, let's just take the plumber, for example. I'm just going to shoot off the hip here. And plumber who's doing, you know, tankless water heater upgrades, right? Sure. So, you know, he's already dealing with, this is, again, can take some construction knowledge, but at least in California, you're going to have to upgrade the size of the gas line. So he's going to have to run the gas line from the meter, potentially move the drains and water supply lines to a different location, sometimes not. You know, so he's already dealing with going under the house or right, like following these lines. Like, to add another service like repipe, right, where you're still staying away from the remodeling and understanding the nuances of, I don't want to really go inside the house and deal with remodeling or new construction, but there's this complete vertical we couldn't just add on, and that's repipes, right?
Rooting could be added, you know.
Rotary. So understand that, being able to see that, and being able to see that the infrastructure can easily add this on with the right team without a big expense and expand. So
you do need to know. So to answer your question about whether or not they need to know something about construction, this is exactly right, because you need to know, like, just by buying that little camera scope the plumber puts in the pipe at the to do the rooting, it's like you could just charge $800 for that or something. I don't know what it goes for now, but that you could charge a couple $100 while you're on the job just to do that, and you made an investment of, I don't know what those things cost, but you know, and then
a couple $1,000s,
whatever. And it's not crazy, and you can, you know, monetize that.
Train the same guy.
Train your same guy to do it.
Right. Doesn't take high level training.
And this is, by the way, again, what we do. We actually talk to people on the phone all the time about exactly this problem. I'm looking at this company. What do you think of this, and where would I go with it? I have a lot of business background. I know finance. I know marketing and all that stuff. And then we look at the trade and we start spitballing these same kind of ideas with people. And so it's helpful, even if not us, to talk to somebody who knows what they're talking about. When it comes to the other thing that I think we should give fair warning about is you are like, because I say exiting a tech company or coming out of an MBA school, because I've met several of both.
Right.
Like, literally, I've met I'd say 6 or 7 kids who got their MBA or a business degree, and now they're looking at it taking over. Usually it's taking over a family member's company. I've talked to these guys. I've also talked to, half dozen or more tech guys. The guy, Brian, that I mentioned a second ago that bought the company in Florida, tech guy, exited a tech company, picked up a trade company. Very, very smart dude. While he was closing, he took the time to really understand and learn that trade too, to his credit. He wasn't trying to rest on what he already knew. He actually went out and he's becoming proficient at actually fixing everything. So good for him. He'll see those opportunities and be able to execute.
He's the one that got the SBA funding
he did,
for part of the purchase.
Took him a year to get that SBA funding, but he did, exactly. Yeah. And so I mean, that's the
I would say, look, I mean, a mind-blowing thing for me a couple of years ago to see was Pacey's. So I have a friend in San Diego that owned a water and fire restoration company. Know him since we were kids from New York. And he had in San Diego one location, recently opened up, recently before selling his company, in Orange County and Riverside. They weren't even like crazy big, but he had 3 locations. And the San Diego location was doing pretty well. And he sold. But and there was an eye opener for me, but more like the eye opener for me was that he got rolled up. And, if you're an MBA grad, you know what a roll-up is, but roll-up is essentially you have like kind of one mothership company rolling up similar companies. So you build up the size of the company that you're either going to make a tremendous exit or take it public, right? Or everyone has a different strategy. But he got rolled up. And it was very interesting to, and I'm close with him, and he would tell me about this. And it was fascinating, So they would look for certain things. They were looking specifically for, water and fire restoration companies that had somewhat of a system that they can roll up and kind of have their mothership, company who had their values and their, practices that they do, but they weren't looking for companies to let us give you software, let us give you systems. They're looking they're looking to just make it better.
Yeah.
Right.
They're looking for territory. They're looking for market share. That's a whole different thing.
Yeah, it's a whole different thing. Yeah. So there's so much that can be done in this space, and there's also not a lot of sophisticated people and funds dealing with the mid-level businesses. It's a very interesting
there's
point.
None. Yeah.
So it creates a lot of opportunity if you are this MBA guy or gal, or someone coming from tech. You'll find it less competitive than, for example, going after a tech company.
There's also something you'll experience in this industry that you would never experience in tech, which is immediate revenue.
Right.
Day one revenue. You're not waiting for 6 months or a year to build out your whatever building out, and then you're not living off venture capital.
Right.
You're living off revenue, which in the trades, you'll never run out of business unless you just walk into the wrong niche or something or don't know what you're doing, you'll never run out of business.
Yeah, the businesses we were looking at, we looked at numbers that we're paying back investors within a matter of a couple of years. Based on the current revenue of the business with zero growth. With zero growth, right? And that was just being conservative. Yeah. So it's very true. It's I think a very interesting thing. So if
I know what I was going to say. Fair warning to the other thing I would say that we need to warn people about is that there's a misconception is you're not going to walk into the trade business and deal with people in the tech industry or people you went to MBA school with. Right. We touched on it earlier with some of our stories and some of the hiring, and trade, the people in the trades.
That was just one story from each.
Yeah, but you're not dealing with people who are college educated. You're not dealing with people who are who are used to executing and using words like KPIs.
Blue collar world.
You're going to have a huge steep learning curve trying to implement software, as we know. I mean, just trying to implement Buildertrend to our field workers we got it in a good place now, but it takes time and it takes and not all of them are receptive to it, and not even all of our subcontractors aren't even using Buildertrend right now. It's like we had to kind of
create an ultimatum for some of them. Yeah.
And we're still working
with
on
us. You're going to be on Buildertrend. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're not going to deal with so personnel is going to be an issue, and I tend to think that we both have the personality that where we grew up blue collar and we can deal with blue collar people and we understand the mentality, but I think it takes the right type also, because one of the things that I've noticed with and you've seen this phenomenon occur too, I don't even know what to call this except for to describe it. You see somebody out in the field, right? And they know when you don't know shit. And what they do is they begin to become your expert. And then, and you know what I'm talking about? The guy who I'm envisioning somebody who's, if you don't know if your bullshit detector isn't always, high tuned, and looking for it, you will get fooled by these guys who just either want more money, want to get out of work, because that's a lot of the times what it is, or are just being idiots and and don't know what the hell they're talking about. And so you have to be able to see through it when when an electrician is telling you that he knows the right way to do something, and you clearly look at it and you're like, this guy's full of shit, and now you have to learn how to deal with them. And if you don't know how to deal with them, your business is fucked, because if you rely on that guy to tell you the truth every single time, you're going to get hosed. And that's,
it takes the right team. So definitely let's talk. And, we're definitely looking to link up to people that we're talking about, tech people and MBA people, because we see the opportunity, like we were just talking about, that there's not a lot of sophistication as far as big financial institutions coming into the mid-level market of the construction space, but there's so much opportunity.
There is.
But you need to know, like you were saying, that blue-collar world, how to get your hands dirty and kind of walk through that. But there's companies that can be brought to, multiples of hundreds of millions to billion, companies that can be brought public. And you see it all the time, right? But usually those companies are someone that came along, got their hands dirty, brought it to Main Street, right, to some funds, and then eventually went to, Wall Street or sold, So, yeah, let's talk.
Yeah. Cool. So I think like one of the, let me see what our last topic can be. Yeah. Well, one last point to put on that would be like the reoccurring revenue model thing too, with if you're looking at that stuff. And we can get into that some other time. We can save that for another day, but talking about service businesses with reoccurring revenue.
Yeah.
I love that. I love those things. But we'll save that topic.
Yeah, we go hours and
that's a good one. But let's talk about the California market and why California. So I think California
love-hate relationship.
Yeah, it is a love-hate relationship. So we are in California, doing business in California. That's where I've been here the last 23 years. How long have you been here? I know 21 years I've been here. How long have you been here?
10 years.
10 years. Yeah. So the California construction market is unlike any other market in the country. I've talked to 40 or more contractors and gotten to know they're on a rather kind of intimate level with knowing their business and what they're looking for and trying to do. Many of them all over in all different states around the country. And one of the things I always find is that they're astounded by some of the stuff I tell them about California. Not only
I'm astounded seeing it on daily.
Not only the regulations, but what we deal with in a market. So just to kind of describe what's different about California, like number one, we know it's the 5th largest economy on planet Earth. Like if it was to separate, California as a state would be the 5th largest economy. So when people are talking about housing and they're talking about construction costs and they're talking about all these things, you're dealing with a completely different animal in California. Everything costs way more here. Things move way faster. Our real estate market you can't even compare it to something like New York because New York doesn't have a real estate market like we do. They're high rises, they're buildings, it's laid out differently. It's like we have a luxury housing market here that's like all single family homes, behaves completely different. That presents a lot of difficulty. Now, I'm not even talking about the regulations and stuff yet, but just in terms of a market, it's the largest market, and it also has. So we have labor shortages, we have materials shortages, or pretty much a psychotic materials market that's constantly fluctuating. At 1 minute something costs one amount, and then it's doubled the next. We saw this through COVID, and we saw prices go up and down and up and down. With, in my opinion, really no rhyme or reason. They just kind of went up and down because people could gouge if they thought. So you get these fluctuations in pricing and stuff like that occur. But it does also predict. California predicts the future of the rest of the market in the country. And a great example of that is like the way California behaves today, the style of homes, the design styles, all that stuff. The pricing you now see in places like Nashville. We're pretty familiar with Nashville now. We've been looking at it for a while, and like that market is starting to become a California-esque market. And like when you talk to people there, they're the locals are annoyed by it. But I see it, and I'm like, I completely understand this. It's behaving like California. Yeah. To the point where you have a lot of our developers moving out there to work. So let's just talk a little bit about the uniqueness of California. And just sort of where we're sitting in the industry in California and what that means.
Yeah, I mean we're both from the East Coast. I'm from New York, from Buffalo. And East New York is also it's difficult in a different way. It's very gritty and there's a hustle and a grit that comes over there. But and they have their own challenges with construction and real estate.
Totally.
So there's a lot of similarities as far as regulation, a lot of very liberal policies, let's just call it what it is, right? And then always focused essentially on the employee, right? Which we're all about culture and taking care of the employees, but when they're focused on just that tax money of just because there's so many employees, right? They just shit on the business owner.
Well, you have in New York, you have unions. That's what you're saying. Yeah, there's so many more. There's so many more union shops there and requirements. Companies that are required to build union. We don't have that.
We don't deal with that.
No,
yeah,
but we do it like
we
if
in
you're
the
building
public
at the
sector,
airport or
in public, and in a lot,
but we still have our own.
So yeah, it's crazy. So we're very highly regulated. Look, I haven't built like in so many other states to like, I just know that like you said, talking from other GCs is like, and I said earlier, is like if you can make it here, you can make it everywhere because our codes, and I'm all about building for quality. It's just some of these things are 50 years old, make no sense, and they put a lot of, and we're all about building green and using materials that are good for the environment, but they have like a lot of green, codes that make zero sense,
Like
with
what?
how rainwater.
Oh, the rain barrels.
Stormwater.
Yeah.
It is the craziest bullshit. Here, Arizona does it as well.
Yeah. What's that lid? Low income, low impact.
Low income development.
Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, it doesn't rain here, so like get a grip on yourself. If it rains, it's gonna water our fake grass and our
Right.
and our flowers that we anyways have drip systems on, right? So they want that you're capturing this rainwater,
Yeah.
putting it into
Barrels.
a barrel,
50-gallon drums.
50-gallon drums. You have a
Stupidest
big
looking-
ass 50-gallon drum next to your house, or
So you got
even worse, you got to do it underground.
Yeah.
Make a fucking pond essentially, right? Then have this from the rain barrel, so it stores the rainwater. Then they want you to like basically have some overflows that then starts watering certain amount of plants, and then there's like the square footage of plants and planters and what type of plants you need to have. And the funny thing is that they want all these plants to be drought tolerant.
Yeah.
Right. It's just
Yeah.
and like they cause the taxpayer, because at the end of the day, everything moves down to the taxpayer, right? Because that expense gets put on to the builder, which obviously we need to put on to the homeowner, right? And it's just like, and again, I'm all about doing things that are good for the environment, but these things make zero sense,
No,
you know?
yeah.
And it's like,
Well, the best is like with the rain barrels too. So you got an $11 million house, and then on the outside of it, you got these disgusting looking
yeah,
blue.
everyone removes it out.
And that's the point.
Everyone removes it
Everyone removes. I had
Yeah.
a set of rain barrels, right? Because back in COVID, you couldn't get them. Remember, you couldn't get them.
There's companies that rent them.
And yeah,
that's all they do. They
That's
just rent them.
basically what I was doing.
Yeah.
I would move them around to different projects, and then I'd move them around to different GCs. And they would literally, guys would call me, say, "Hey, do you got those rain barrels? Can I use them for a week?"
Yeah.
They'd be on the site for a week and then removed immediately after.
Yeah.
And there is not a single, by the way, you can take the most diehard blue client out there, the most, I mean, literally, Kamala Harris, like
Right.
like
And they're like $50,000, what?
T-shirt on, right? And they will remove those rain barrels
Yeah.
from their beautiful house so
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah.
I mean, they have no right. That's where their liberalism ends.
Yeah,
literally at those
it's
stupid
there.
rain barrels,
Yeah.
they're gone.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's just one of many silly things that we put up with in California, the regulation and stuff. But the building code is tough.
Yeah, and then also we have municipalities, right? Because LA has about like 20 million people in LA County, right?
Something like that, yeah.
Massive, right? So I mean, it has blessings and some negative things as well. But so meaning we're in a down market technically right now.
This is the
right?
worst. Yeah.
Yeah. But there's so many people here with so much money,
Right.
that if you have a strong brand,
Right.
and you'll do okay,
Right.
even in a down market, right?
That's right.
Where even with a strong brand might be in a smaller town, that's rough right now, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. No one in any part of the country. I mean, there are obviously pockets where things are still happening, but we're at the lowest market I've ever experienced in 21 years in California, for sure. The worst economy I've ever experienced, and we're fine because of the brand, and the fact that, like you said, we're sitting in a place where it's the fifth largest economy in the world.
Amount of people and the amount of money.
People and the amount of money. Yeah.
For every person that can't do it, there's another person that can.
Yeah.
Now the market shifts, and that's a whole nother conversation. It becomes a buyer's market, but that's where the brand comes into place. They're more picky. They're more right. They're not just going to take where it was in COVID. There was more supply, more demand than there was supply, right? So people are just settling with shitty contractors, right? So, but going back to the California thing is so we have different municipalities, like little different towns. Pasadena, I hate you. Santa Monica. So we need to be big enough that we can call out these towns and actually make change, right? I've known
we'll edit that out.
You fought some of them, yeah.
We'll edit that out. Yeah.
No, fuck that.
I have fought them. Yeah, of course.
You've done some public lawsuits, right? So
we did. Yeah.
That, which is crazy, right? These are the things we have to do to deal with the cities here. So, for example, cities like Pasadena, you could want to do a room addition because they're like this, just the way they manage their city, right? So you're dealing with their own plan check, their own inspectors, their municipality. And they can take a year to approve a room addition or even a remodel that you're removing some walls, a year, right? So you got to tell the client when they're hiring you, hey, you might be talking about a 2-year process to do this little 2-room addition, a year and a half. They're like, what? I have a kid on the way. I just got my wife pregnant and like, I need an extra bedroom. You're telling me a year and a half from now. So the wait times, and then when we deal with inspections, they could be a week, 2 weeks out. They could be a week, 2 weeks out, and to get an inspection, you know what that does to a job flow, like a workflow? Like, I got to figure out where I'm going to be in 2 weeks to be able to call ahead for my inspections. I can't finish my framing and then call, for an inspection. That's a bad example because I can do other things, but I can't finish like all my MEPs, right, and mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, and then wait 2 weeks. I'll have 2 weeks of downtime. I can't do anything. I can't close up the walls. Can't do anything, right? So there's a lot of that, and they get away with it because the amount of people, because the amount of money. They can tell the business owner basically like, you don't like it, fuck off, right? Yeah. Like, so there is some of that, which is always frustrating as a business owner. I mean, we have the best weather in the country, some of the most, I mean, just the diverse. So coming from more of a creative perspective, also, this is something that Roman from BSPK told me, he's a designer. He has an architectural and a design firm. So it's like that California, as far as being like a leader in these things, like
creatively,
we have people from all over. Like New York has, even though you have people, a melting pot of New York, you have brownstones and you have this, right? They have like very set, because also New York is older as far as this being a city. Right. LA is like so new in development and everything.
Architecturally, we're on another plane.
Yeah.
Like if you go to, we've defined the modern beach house. I mean, you go to Manhattan Beach or you look at KAA Design or these architecture firms or BSPK who's the other that we just met?
Not BSPK.
No, down in Manhattan Beach.
Oh. Luis and
Marcella.
And Marcella, yeah.
You take their style. It's like that's the quintessential modern beach house. You go to the modern farmhouse was invented and put. I mean, it's literally. I mean, I'll say it.
Well, it was started somewhere else, but we made it like really, a trend. I hate that trend now. Yeah,
but like the Kardashians sort of made that what it is. And now, what do you see in Nashville?
From a local builder from the Valley,
right?
Who builds in Hidden Hills.
In Hidden Hills, it belongs in Nashville, and they're all over there. But anyway, we can go all day on California. We'll do another if people like that or want more on California. We talk California specific. But we should wrap up because we have to shoot the beginning of this thing now. So, the Bronx. So anyway, that's good.